Now you just know you're going to have a problem drywalling in a room when you see something like this in the corner. About 1.5 inches or so at the bottom and tight at the top. Fun, fun, fun. You already know the room is askew. And wouldn't you know it, the fun doesn't stop there either as we get wider and wider and wider as we go along here. I was originally going to do this piece of ceiling in one solid piece, but after discovering how skewed the room was, it makes measuring absolutely impossible. I think I'm just going to do it as a patchwork because I think it'll be easier that way. Maintain a sharp blade on your utility knife and change the blade often. This will help you make nice clean cuts, and will assist you in cutting your drywall nicely. Change your blades frequently. Now, there are a few things that are more dangerous than a dull utility knife, and to change this, you just simply take a screwdriver, take your knife apart, take a new blade, put it inside, and then just simply put the knife back together. And that's about all there is to that job. Just put it back together. Same thing with these retractable blades. Okay, now you'll notice here there's a couple of holes. Make sure you put that in the middle there. I mean, well, this one here has a double bump here, but there's some of them with only single bumps, and you can actually put them too far ahead. Make sure you put it behind because you're going to want something to leverage against. So, but yeah, do make sure you keep these things sharp. Change your blades frequently because they do go dull rather quickly. So you're going to want a sharp blade. It's much safer to work with a sharp blade rather than having one that is sliding all over the place on you and not really cutting all that effectively anyways. So, you know, to cut drywall, simply mark out your line and take a sharp utility knife, use a steel edge, and all you have to do is just simply go through and cut the paper. It's kind of like cutting glass, where all you have to do is just put a scratch in the glass and the break will follow where the crack is. It's the same thing here. All you have to do is break the paper, and then you just simply flip the drywall up and it'll break exactly where you put the score on the other side. And then just take your knife and just follow through. You're going to want to have a nice sharp knife for this. Keep your cuts clean. There we go. Okay, so I'm keeping all these little pieces here because I've got to do some headers, and hopefully some of them will come in handy. Now, got just a little piece to trim on the edge here. Now this is where you have to dull your knife pretty good because you actually have to cut through the plaster here now. So just several successive strokes will slowly cut through to the other side here. And just take the garbage can, and just cut the big part off. snap that off, the rest of it. And then just take a drywall rasp and get the last of that off. And the rest of it, now that piece should just go right into place. Now before you get started with any project where you're working around electrical and you have to remove the fixture, always take the time to shut the breaker off and then tie your points off. Just a safety precaution, just in case somebody accidentally flips the breaker back on. You don't want to start a fire, get electrocuted while you're working. To patch a hole like this, just simply take some drywall glue and put it on the back of your piece, and then just slap your piece of drywall in and have it fit roughly, and then just use patching compound to fill in the gaps. Okay, now this hole in the wall here was placed to accommodate the addition of a bunch of electrical. Now when you've got a hole in the wall like this, a little bit of common sense is in order. You're probably not going to want to use drywall screws to put your piece of drywall in place there. So what you're going to do is go get yourself a tube of drywall adhesive instead, and simply glue that piece into place, and then apply your plaster. Okay, now when you're putting pieces like this in, it's also handy to keep a utility knife in your pocket, as well as a pencil, just in case you need to mark stuff. Really handy. I mean, if you had to work around this here, oh, actually I can see I do have to work around that. So we'll just take the knife, we'll stand to the side, make sure that we don't get it in our eyeballs, and we're just gonna cut in there just a bit, and just, there we go. That's no longer pushing up on there now. That drops in nice and flush. There we go. Just watch your wires so you don't want to be damaging any of those. Okay, so yeah, and especially when you're dry fitting the piece, to make sure that it fits, you know, it's handy just to have a pencil just to mark things off. So just a little tip there, keep in mind. Just gonna run my blade up here, get a little bit of pressure off, see if I can't get that to sit a little bit of a lip here, and take some pressure off of that. I can get that to pop up there. Knife between the two sheets, and that'll just shave off any rough stuff between them, and that should just pop right up in there now. There we go. Done. Now before you begin drywalling, you have to make a decision on what kind of corners you're going to use. Because you need to put the drywall in slightly different fashion for each one. We've got the traditional square corner drywall, and that involves an overlapping on the corners. And then there's the newer style of the rounded edge bead, and that you need to keep the drywall back from the corners a bit to allow for the rounding on the corner. And this is what I was talking about. Now with the traditional square corner, you simply put the drywall right over the corner, and it's overlapped, and then the corner bead just goes right on top of it here. And now with the bow nose or the rounded corner, you need to actually pull it back. You pull it back just the thickness of the drywall itself, and then the corner goes over it, and it uses this rounded area here to make the corner. A pair of metal snips is handy for cutting the metal part of the beads, whether it's the J bead or the paper beads. They have a metal piece that goes through them, so you might want to keep one of these handy. It just helps to get cleaner cuts. To cut the metal trim J, simply mark your spot and cut like so, then directly above that cut like that. Then all you need to do is just simply bend the piece back, and do that a couple of times and the piece will break on its own. To get a notched corner out of a piece of drywall, mark it out first, and then take your razor knife and just score the longest segment, and just cut through the paper there. Once you've scored through the long segment, take your keyhole saw and just cut through the short segment. Like so, and then just snap it and cut it like normal. I always use the drywall rasp just to take any rough sections off. Just helps ensure that the piece fits nice and smoothly. It also gives you nice square edges as well. And I think we're ready. We're ready to put this piece into place now. Okay, now with that all done, presuming you've done your measuring correctly, this should just pop into place. And there we go. Now, before you put it up, you're going to want to make note of where all your studs are running, and you want to take your drill and put an 1 5/8 drywall screw every 6 inches around the perimeter of the board, and down the studs you want to go every 8 inches. Okay, and just put that on tight. You want to get the screw tight, but you don't want to break through the surface of the paper. Just get put enough pressure on it that it makes a nice little dimple. It's where a variable speed drill is handy. If you have a situation like this where you've got a pipe coming through the wall, or a wire or whatever you need to have come through, it makes sense to plan for it in advance. Put some blocking in behind, and then what you do is just simply cut out the one side here and put half your piece in, and then take the other half and just simply cut it to fit, so it goes around the other way. And slip that into place here, and just like that. And then you can just screw that down. A little bit more trimming here, but you can basically see how it's done. Now, one problem people sometimes run into when they're renovating a small room is that they'll bring a sheet of drywall into the room, and lo and behold, they'll go to put it up against the wall, and they realize that the backside is facing out, but they've got a problem in that the room is too small to actually physically turn the drywall around. There's actually a really easy solution to this problem, and it's probably a bit simpler than you might think. What you do is you simply put the piece of drywall on the floor, set it down, and simply pick it up by the other side, and now it's ready to go up against the wall. Now typically when a professional crew comes into a job and puts up a drywall, they'll take the sheets, the crew will lift them up to the ceiling, and then they'll screw those ones in place, and then they'll take the bottom sheet, they'll put it up under there, and they'll use a kicker to lift it up into place, and then they'll screw that to the wall. And that'll leave typically a 1/2 inch, 1 inch gap at the bottom of the floor. And then that gap is covered over by the trim when the trim goes on. Now when you're working alone, you don't have that option. So what I do, and in this case my wall is less than 8 feet anyway, so irrespective of that, if I have two 4-foot sheets, I'm gonna have to cut one down anyways. So what I do is I put on the bottom sheet, and then it's just easier to take the top sheet and cut out all my holes, and then use this as a ledger to put the sheet up.